The massive chamber buzzed with tension as Ambassador David Thompson watched the holographic vote counter climb. Red lights flickered across the display, each one representing another species turning their backs on the Kithera. 47 civilizations had already cast their votes. 47 rejections. Thompson's hands gripped the podium as he stared at the final tally. The Altarians, with their crystal-like skin gleaming under the chamber's artificial suns, had voted to abandon them. The insectoid hegemony delegates clicked their mandibles in approval as their rejection appeared on screen. Even the peaceful Centauri, who preached harmony across the stars, had chosen fear over compassion. Only humanity stood alone in opposition. "The decision is final," announced Chancellor Vextar, his four eyes scanning the assembly with cold efficiency. "The Kithera species poses an unacceptable risk to galactic security. Quarantine protocols will begin immediately." Thompson felt his stomach drop. The Kithera weren't warriors or conquerors. They were gentle aquatic beings who had never even developed space travel. Their only crime was carrying ancient genetic markers in their DNA that some paranoid scientists claimed could theoretically be turned into a biological weapon. Not that they were weapons, not that the Kithera even knew about this genetic quirk, just that they might possibly be dangerous someday if someone really tried hard enough to make them so. "This is madness," Thompson whispered into his communicator, watching as the chamber's main screen switched to a live feed of Kithera Prime. The blue-green world looked peaceful from space, but Thompson knew the truth. Their oceans were slowly dying from industrial pollution, and without galactic aid, the entire species would be extinct within a generation. The Altarian representative, Krystala, turned her faceted head toward the human section. "Your species is young, Ambassador Thompson. You do not understand the harsh realities of galactic survival. Sometimes difficult decisions must be made for the greater good." "The greater good?" Thompson stood up, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "We're talking about an entire species. Billions of innocent lives who have never harmed anyone." "Irrelevant," clicked General Zorth of Hegemony, his insect-like features twisted in what might have been disgust. "They carry the genetic template for the Shadow Plague. The risk cannot be tolerated." Thompson wanted to scream that the so-called Shadow Plague was theoretical at best, a nightmare scenario cooked up by fearful scientists who saw weapons in every strand of DNA. But he knew it was pointless. Fear had already won. Within hours of the vote, the blockade began. Thompson watched from Earth's orbital station as massive hegemony dreadnoughts took position around the Kithera system. Trade ships that had been carrying medical supplies and water purifiers were turned away at gunpoint. Communication satellites went dark as the galactic network was severed. The Kithera government sent desperate pleas to the few remaining channels, their translated words echoing in Thompson's mind. "We do not understand. What have we done wrong? Please, our children are sick. Our waters grow more poisonous each day. We need help." But help wasn't coming. The galaxy had made its choice. Thompson pulled up the classified reports on his personal tablet, the ones the Council refused to acknowledge. Kithera Prime's ecosystem was collapsing faster than anyone had predicted. Their industrial age had lasted only 2 centuries, but without the clean technologies other species had shared, they had poisoned their own world. The quarantine wasn't just cruel, it was a death sentence. President Helen Crawford's face appeared on Thompson's secure communicator, her expression grim. "David, I've been getting calls from the Joint Chiefs. They're asking if we're really going to throw away our galactic membership over this." Thompson looked out at the stars, imagining the Kithera families huddled in their underwater cities, watching their world die around them. "Madam President, what kind of membership is worth the genocide of an entire species?" Crawford was quiet for a long moment. "The kind that keeps humanity safe, some would argue. The kind that gives us access to technology that could solve our energy crisis and cure diseases." "And what happens when it's our turn?" Thompson asked. "What happens when a galaxy decides that humans are too aggressive, too unpredictable? Will we want them to stand by while we're quarantined to death?" That night, Thompson couldn't sleep. He stood at his apartment window, looking down at Earth City lights, thinking about the Kithera children who would never see their planet heal. Tomorrow, He would return to the council chambers and watch as trade routes were officially severed and the last diplomatic ties were cut. The galaxy had spoken with one voice, except for humanity. And sometimes, Thompson realized, one voice was enough to make all the difference, even if no one was listening yet. Captain James Mitchell checked his cargo manifest for the third time as his freighter approached the outer edge of Kythera space. On paper, the New Dawn was carrying mining equipment and geological survey tools. In reality, his hold was packed with water purification tablets, medical supplies, and protein synthesizers that could keep a Kythera family alive for months. "Captain, we've got company," called out Lieutenant Rebecca Foster from a navigation station. Her voice was steady, but Mitchell caught the tension underneath. Hegemony Patrol Cruiser, bearing 27 Mark IV. They're moving to intercept. Mitchell's jaw tightened as he watched the sleek alien warship close the distance on his screens. The Hegemony took their blockade duties seriously, and getting caught smuggling supplies to the quarantined world would mean more than just losing his ship. It would mean ending humanity's secret lifeline to the dying Kythera. "All hands, this is the captain," Mitchell announced over the ship's intercom. "We're about to have visitors. Remember, we're simple miners looking for rare metals in the asteroid belt. Nothing more." The Hegemony cruiser's angular hull filled their view screen as it pulled alongside. Mitchell had always thought the insectoid race's ships looked like giant metal beetles, all sharp edges and predatory grace. A harsh voice crackled through their communication system, the universal translator giving it an emotionless mechanical tone. "Human vessel, you are approaching restricted space. State your purpose and prepare for inspection." Mitchell straightened his uniform and nodded to Foster to open the channel. "This is Captain Mitchell of the merchant vessel New Dawn. We're conducting mineral surveys in the outer asteroid belt. Standard commercial operation." There was a pause that felt like hours, but lasted only seconds. "Transmit your survey permits and cargo manifests immediately." Foster's fingers flew over a console, uploading the carefully forged documents that had cost Mitchell 3 months' salary to acquire. He watched the Hegemony ship scanning arrays light up, probing his vessel with invisible beams that could detect everything from weapon signatures to biological matter. "Sir," whispered Foster, "they're getting deep scans of Cargo Bay 3. If they detect the medical supplies—" "Stay calm," Mitchell muttered back, though his own heart was hammering against his ribs. Cargo Bay 3 held enough antibiotics to treat 1,000 sick Kythera children. If the Hegemony found it, those children would die along with any hope of future supply runs. The scanning continued for what felt like an eternity. Mitchell forced himself to appear bored, even drumming his fingers on his armrest like an impatient merchant worried about lost profits. Inside, he was calculating jump coordinates and wondering if his aging freighter could outrun a military cruiser. "Your documentation appears in order," the alien voice finally announced. "However, you are advised that the asteroid belt in the system is under surveillance. Any deviation from approved mining zones will be considered a hostile act." "Understood," Mitchell replied, relief flooding through him like cold water. "We'll stick to the approved areas." The Hegemony cruiser peeled away, its engines leaving a brief trail of exotic particles across the New Dawn sensors. Mitchell waited until they were well out of scanner range before allowing himself to breathe normally again. "That was close," Foster said, wiping sweat from her forehead. "How did they miss the medical supplies?" Mitchell smiled grimly. "Because officially, those aren't medical supplies. According to our manifest, Cargo Bay 3 is full of water recycling filters for our mining operation." He paused, looking at the blue-greened out of Kythera Prime growing larger on their screens. "Which isn't technically a lie. We just didn't mention what kind of water we're planning to filter." 3 hours later, the New Dawn broke through Kythera Prime's cloud cover and descended toward the planet's vast oceans. Mitchell had made this run 17 times now, but the sight never failed to move him. The Kythera cities rose from the seafloor like coral gardens, their bioluminescent architecture glowing softly in the depths. Beautiful and dying, a group of Kythera waited for them in the shallows, their sleek forms barely visible beneath the waves. Mitchell watched through the cargo bay's viewing port as his crew unloaded crate after crate of supplies. The aliens' large eyes reflected gratitude that needed no translation. One young Kithra approached the loading ramp, moving with the fluid grace of a creature born to the water. Through the translation unit, her words came out in careful, accented English. Captain Mitchell, the children in the deep colonies are getting better because of your medicine. The elders want to know why your people risk so much for strangers. Mitchell looked down at her, thinking of his own daughter back on Earth, probably doing homework at the kitchen table right now. Because someone has to, he said simply, because leaving people to die when you can help them isn't who we want to be. As the new dawn lifted off hours later, Mitchell was already planning the next run, 18 supply missions and counting. Each one a small act of defiance against a galaxy that had chosen fear over compassion. Admiral Robert Hayes stood on the bridge of the U.S. Defiance, watching as dozens of human ships took their positions around Kithra space. The formation stretched across thousands of kilometers, creating what his tactical officer had nicknamed the Shield. It wasn't the most elegant military deployment Hayes had ever seen, but it was certainly the most stubborn. "Admiral, the Resolute is reporting ready status," announced Commander Lisa Park over the communications channel. Her destroyer held the forward position, closest to where the Hegemony battle group had been gathering for the past week. Hayes nodded, studying the tactical display that showed every ship in their makeshift fleet. Military destroyers and frigates flew alongside converted cargo haulers and mining vessels. Even a few civilian passenger liners had joined them, their captains claiming they were on extended sightseeing tours that just happened to involve parking next to a quarantined alien world. "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the Hegemony flagship," reported Lieutenant Foster, who had transferred from Captain Mitchell's freighter to serve as Hayes' communications officer. "Admiral Zekdara wants to speak with you directly." "Put him through," Hayes said, straightening his uniform. The main screen flickered to life, showing the insectoid features of the Hegemony's senior commander. Even through the universal translator, Zekdara's voice carried clear irritation. "Admiral Hayes, you are in violation of Galactic Council Resolution 847. Remove your vessels from this system immediately or face the consequences." Hayes clasped his hands behind his back, a habit he developed during 30 years of military service. "Admiral Zekdara, my ships are operating in international space. We're not violating any treaties that I'm aware of." The alien's compound eyes glittered with what might have been amusement. "You are interfering with a lawful quarantine. Your presence here serves no purpose except to complicate a necessary security operation. Our purpose is simple," Hayes replied calmly. "We're making sure nothing bad happens to people who can't protect themselves. Call it a humanitarian mission." Zekdara's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign that Hayes had learned indicated extreme agitation. "The Kithra are not people, Admiral. They are carriers of a potential biological weapon. Your emotional attachment to inferior species clouds your judgment." The bridge fell silent. Hayes felt the eyes of his crew on him, waiting to see how he would respond to such casual dismissal of an entire civilization. He thought of the reports he'd been reading, descriptions of Kithra children playing in underwater gardens while their world slowly poisoned itself around them. "Admiral," Hayes said quietly, "the day I stop caring about innocent lives is the day I stop deserving to wear this uniform. My ships will remain in position." The transmission cut off abruptly. Hayes turned to his tactical officer, Commander Wilson. "How long before their reinforcements arrive?" "Our intelligence suggests another battle group is en route from the Hegemony core worlds. They'll be here in 72 hours. Wilson paused, studying his displays. "Sir, when they arrive, we'll be outnumbered 3-1. Maybe worse." Hayes nodded grimly. The math was simple and unforgiving. In a straight fight, the human fleet would last maybe 20 minutes against superior alien technology. But this wasn't about winning a battle. It was about making a statement that would echo across the galaxy. "All ships, maintain formation." Hayes broadcast on the general frequency. "I want every captain to understand what we're doing here. We're not trying to start a war. We're trying to prevent one. The Kithra never asked to be born with genetic markers that scare the Council. They never chose to be different. But they're facing extinction because of it." On his screen, Hayes watched as human ships adjusted their positions, creating overlapping fields of fire that would make any attack costly for the hegemony. It wasn't enough to win, but it might be enough to make them think twice. "Sir," Foster called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Kithra Prime. Elder Tidesinger wants to thank the fleet personally." The main screen shifted to show the alien scientist, his sleek form floating in what appeared to be an underwater laboratory. Through the translation matrix, his words carried a musical quality that reminded Hayes of whale songs. "Admiral Hayes, your people risk everything for strangers. This kindness is beyond our understanding, but not beyond our gratitude. We offer what little we can give. Our knowledge of ocean systems, our biotechnology, our healing arts. Perhaps together we can accomplish what neither species could achieve alone." Hayes felt something tighten in his chest as he watched Kithra scientists working alongside human engineers in the background of the transmission. They were sharing secrets that had taken millennia to develop, all because humanity had chosen to stand between them and extinction. "Elder Tidesinger," Hayes replied, "we're honored by your trust, and we'll make sure it wasn't misplaced." As the transmission ended, Hayes returned his attention to the tactical display. Somewhere beyond the edge of the system, hegemony reinforcements were racing toward them. The real test was still coming. The message from New Manchester Colony arrived during Admiral Hayes' morning briefing, and the desperation in Governor Patricia Wells' voice cut through the static like a knife. Her face on the screen looked years older than when Hayes had seen her just months ago. "Admiral, we're down to 40% power across the colony," Wells reported, her voice barely steady. "The hegemony cut off our supply lines 3 weeks ago. No replacement parts, no medical supplies, nothing. We've got 8,000 people here, including 1,500 children." Hayes watched the recording in his private quarters aboard the Defiance, the weight of command pressing down on his shoulders like a physical thing. New Manchester was just one of dozens of human colonies now suffering under the galactic sanctions. The price of protecting the Kithra was being paid by his own people, and the bills were coming due faster than anyone had expected. "Sir," his aide knocked and entered without waiting for permission. "General Barnes is requesting an immediate conference call. It's urgent." The holographic projection of General Michael Barnes materialized in Hayes' cabin minutes later, his weathered face grim with bad news. "Admiral, I'll cut straight to the point. We got civil unrest breaking out on 3 colonies. Riots on Proxima Station. The mining crews on Titan 7 have gone on strike." "What are they demanding?" Hayes asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "They want to know why they're starving while we protect aliens most of them have never heard of," Barnes replied bluntly. "The colonial governors are asking the same questions. Hell, half the Joint Chiefs are asking the same questions." Hayes stood and walked to his cabin's porthole, looking out at the human ships maintaining their protective formation around Kithra space. Some of those crews had families on the suffering colonies. They were choosing to stay here anyway, knowing their loved ones were paying the price for their principles. "General, what would you do in my position?" Hayes asked quietly. Barnes was silent for a long moment. 20 years ago, I have told you to bring the fleet home and let the aliens sort out their own problems. But I've been reading the intelligence reports, Robert. What the Kithra are sharing with our scientists, their biotechnology, could revolutionize medicine. Their understanding of ocean systems could help us terraform dead worlds. Maybe the price is worth paying. Before Hayes could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. His communications officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Admiral to the bridge immediately. We have multiple hostile contacts approaching Commander Park's position." Hayes rushed to the bridge to find chaos. The tactical display showed 3 unmarked ships diving toward the Resolute's position, their weapons already charging. These weren't official hegemony forces. The ship designs were wrong, too crude and aggressive for military vessels. "Extremist faction," Commander Wilson reported tersely. "Probably the Purity Coalition. They've been making noise about taking matters into their own hands." On screen, Hayes watched as the 3 ships opened fire on Park's destroyer, without warning. The Resolute shook under the impact, her shields flaring bright blue against the incoming plasma bolts. "All ships, move to support the Resolute," Hayes ordered, but he knew it would take precious minutes for help to arrive. Park's ship was fighting alone against 3 opponents designed for one purpose: killing. Commander Park's voice came through the communication system, distorted by static and the sounds of battle. "Admiral, they're targeting our life support systems. These aren't warning shots. They're trying to kill us all." The Resolute returned fire, her weapons tearing into the nearest attacker's hull. But the destroyer was taking tremendous damage. Atmosphere venting from multiple hull breaches like silver streams against the black of space. "Sir, the Resolute is requesting permission to withdraw," reported the communications officer. "Denied." Park's voice cut him before Hayes could respond. "We hold the line. That's what we came here to do." Hayes watched helplessly as the battle unfolded. The Resolute was dying by inches, her hull glowing cherry red from plasma impacts. Just as the first support ships arrived, one of the attacker's heavy weapons found its mark. The destroyer's main reactor went critical, and Park's ship broke apart in a flash of white light that briefly outshone the system star. The silence that followed felt like the death of hope itself. Hayes stared at the debris field where a moment ago one of his finest officers had been fighting to protect innocent lives. Beside the wreckage, a Kithra medical transport continued on its course, completely unaware of the sacrifice that had just been made for its safety. "Sir," Foster reported quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from Elder Tidesinger." The Kithra witnessed the battle. The alien scientist appeared on screen, his large eyes reflecting something that transcended species boundaries: grief. "Admiral Hayes, Commander Park died protecting our healers. We do not forget such courage. Our scientists are accelerating their work. Your people's sacrifice will have meaning." Hayes nodded, unable to trust his voice. Outside, the shield held firm, but everyone now understood the true cost of their defiance. Captain Thomas Wright had seen plenty of strange things during his 20 years as a scout pilot, but nothing had prepared him for what his sensors were showing him in the dead Proxima system. Where yesterday there had been nothing but ancient ruins and floating debris, now massive structures were rising from hidden installations deep within the system's asteroid fields. "Control, this is Scout 7. Wright transmitted back to Admiral Hayes' fleet, his voice tight with disbelief. "You need to see this. The whole system is waking up." The structures weren't ships in any sense Wright understood. They were geometric nightmares of black metal and pulsing energy, each one the size of a city. As he watched through his cockpit canopy, dozens more emerged from concealment, their surfaces crawling with mechanical activity that made his skin crawl. "Scout 7, describe what you're seeing," came Hayes' voice over the comm, steady despite the tension Wright could hear underneath. "Sir, they're machines. Ancient ones. And they're not friendly." Wright's tactical display lit up like a Christmas tree as the structures began launching smaller units. Swarms of mechanical drones poured out like angry wasps, each one scanning space with beams of harsh blue light. The first probe swept over Wright's scout ship, and immediately his hull began to smoke. Whatever these machines were looking for, they didn't like finding it. Wright threw his ship into a desperate evasive pattern as more drones converged on his position. "They're targeting biological signatures." Wright shouted into his communicator as his ship's hull started to buckle under the alien weapons. "Anything alive they want dead." Wright barely made it back to the fleet alive, his scout ship trailing atmosphere in sparks. By the time he landed in the Defiance's hangar bay, reports were flooding in from across the galaxy. The mechanical swarms were spreading faster than anyone had imagined possible, consuming entire worlds in their path. Admiral Hayes stood in the fleet's command center, watching as the galactic communication networks lit up with desperate pleas for help. The same species that had voted to abandon the Kithra were now begging for assistance against an enemy that made their petty fears look ridiculous. "Admiral," reported Commander Wilson, "we're receiving an emergency transmission from the Galactic Council. Chancellor Vextar wants to speak with you immediately." The alien leader's 4 eyes were wide with panic when his image appeared on screen. Gone was the cold arrogance Hayes remembered from the quarantine vote. In its place was raw, primitive fear. "Admiral Hayes, the Council formally requests Earth's immediate military assistance. Our weapons are useless against these machines. They adapt to our energy signatures within minutes." Hayes felt a bitter smile tug at his lips. Chancellor, I seem to recall the Council voting to exclude humanity from galactic affairs. Why should we help now? Because if we fall, your species dies with us, Vextar replied desperately. These machines don't distinguish between Council members and outcasts. They're destroying everything biological they encounter. Before Hayes could respond, Elder Tidesinger's image joined the transmission from Kithra Prime. The alien scientist's usual calm demeanor was replaced by urgent excitement. Admiral, we have discovered something crucial. These machines, they are not invaders. They are guardians, built by my ancestors eons ago to protect the galaxy from biological contamination. But their programming has become corrupted over the millennia. Hayes leaned forward. What does that mean for stopping them? The genetic markers that made my people outcasts, they are not weapons, Tidesinger explained rapidly. They're authorization codes. My DNA carries the commands to shut down the Guardian systems. But the machines will not accept remote signals. Someone must get close enough to interface directly. The implications hit Hayes like a physical blow. The very thing that had made the Kithra pariahs was the key to saving the galaxy. But getting close to the mechanical swarms meant flying through weapons fire that could tear apart the strongest warships. Elder, can your people make the approach? Hayes asked. Our vessels are not designed for combat, Admiral. We would not survive the journey to the Guardian installations. Hayes looked at the tactical displays, showing human ships still maintaining their protective formation around Kithra space. Ships that had endured months of hardship and sacrifice. Crews that had watched their friends die defending strangers. Now those same ships might be the galaxy's only hope. All human vessels, this is Admiral Hayes. He broadcasts his fleet. We have a chance to end this threat, but it means escorting Kithra biotransports directly into the heart of enemy formations. I won't order anyone to make this run. It's volunteer only. The response was immediate and unanimous. Every single captain volunteered. Hours later, Hayes watched from the bridge of the Defiance as human warships formed protective escorts around Kithra biotransports. Where human weapons failed to penetrate the machine's defenses, Kithra genetic code succeeded, shutting down the ancient Guardians one installation at a time. In the aftermath, as the galaxy slowly returned to normal, Ambassador Thompson addressed the reformed Galactic Council. The shield we formed around Kithra space wasn't just about protecting one species, Thompson said, looking out at delegates who had finally learned the price of abandonment. It was about proving that sometimes the right choice is a hard choice, and that standing together is always stronger than standing alone. The Kithra were no longer pariahs. They were partners.